What if I told you Rome conquered the ancient world not just with swords and shields, but with tactics so insane they looked impossible? A human fortress crawling under a rain of arrows, javelins designed to make shields useless, elephants charging into chaos. Today we're breaking down 5 of the craziest Roman tactics, and the battles where they changed history forever. The year is 70 AD. Jerusalem burns under siege. From the walls, defenders rain down arrows, stones, and fire. Most armies would collapse, but not the Romans. At a shouted command, shields lock together, front, sides, and overhead, until the soldiers resemble a massive tortoise crawling forward. The Testudo. Missiles bounce harmlessly away. Fire slides off. The living fortress inches toward the gates. Inside the city, defenders must have felt a chill. Nothing could stop this slow, grinding advance. Soon the walls were breached. Jerusalem fell. The temple burned. The revolt was crushed. The Testudo didn't just protect. It made Rome unstoppable in sieges. But while the Testudo shielded them from above, how do you break through an enemy wall of spears that stretched across the battlefield? That's where the Pila came in. In 168 BC, Rome faced the Macedonian phalanx at Pydna, the weapon that once carried Alexander the Great to the edge of the world. Thousands of men advanced in lockstep, pikes 18 feet long, forming a forest of spears no one dared to face. As the phalanx closed in, Roman legionaries hurled their Pila. These weren't ordinary javelins. They bent on impact, sticking into enemy shields, making them heavy and useless. Soldiers tossed them aside, leaving gaps in the line. The moment Rome was waiting for had come. Legionaries surged forward with short swords, stabbing, slashing, and tearing the phalanx apart. The mighty Macedonian formation, undefeated for centuries, crumbled. Macedon fell. Greece became Rome's prize. The Pila turned the enemy's greatest strength into weakness. But clever weapons weren't enough. What about when Rome faced the greatest general in history, Hannibal Barca? For nearly 2 decades, Hannibal had humiliated Rome. He crossed the Alps, crushed armies at Trebia, Trasimene, and Cannae, where 50,000 Romans died in a single day. But in 202 BC, everything came down to one last battle, Zama. Hannibal brought elephants, veterans, and brilliance. Rome sent Scipio Africanus, a man who had studied Hannibal's every move. Scipio deployed the triplex aces, 3 battle lines. When the elephants charged, the first line opened corridors, letting them pass harmlessly through. Trumpets blared, panicking the beasts until they rampaged back into Hannibal's men. Then the infantry clashed. The first line fought, then pulled back in order, replaced by the second. Fresh men pressed forward, while the exhausted fell back. Finally, the veterans of the third line advanced, a tidal wave of steel. Hannibal was defeated. Carthage was broken. Rome ruled the Mediterranean, but not every Roman victory came from head-on clashes. Sometimes their craziest tactic was refusing to fight at all. After Hannibal invaded Italy in 218 BC, panic spread. Fields burned, armies fell. Rome's allies wavered. The Republic itself seemed doomed. Then came Quintus Fabius Maximus. Instead of rushing into Hannibal's traps, he shadowed his army. Roman legions cut supply lines, ambushed foragers, and left villages empty before Hannibal could seize food. Crops were burned, herds were hidden. Hannibal's army starved on Italian soil. The Senate mocked Fabius, calling him Cunctator, the delayer. But his patience saved Rome. Hannibal couldn't force a decisive battle. Rome rebuilt, retrained, and lived to strike back at Zama. The Fabian strategy proved that patience could be deadlier than swords. But discipline wasn't just for grand strategy. The Romans had another tactic that gave them the edge every single night. Most armies were vulnerable after a long march. At night, exhausted soldiers would sleep in tents, easy prey for ambush. But not the Romans. Every evening, legionaries built a castra, a fortified marching camp. Ditches were dug, ramparts raised, palisades driven in. By nightfall, a fortress stood where only open ground had been that morning. Gates, towers, streets laid out in order. During Trajan's wars in Dacia, this discipline was unstoppable. The Carpathians were the perfect terrain for ambush, but Roman camps turned every night into safety. Raiders found not weary men, but walls bristling with defenders. Step by step, fortress by fortress, Rome advanced until the Dacian capital fell. Gold poured into Rome, fueling its golden age. Rome turned exhaustion into power. Even rest became a weapon. From the tortoise Testudo crawling under arrows, to the Pila that shattered the phalanx. From Scipio's triple lines to Fabius's patient shadow war, to fortresses built in a single night. The Romans proved that imagination was just as deadly as steel. These weren't just tactics. They were the lifelines of empire, strategies that turned disaster into triumph, and ensured Rome didn't just survive. It ruled the world for centuries. Which tactic do you think was the craziest? Drop your thoughts in the comments, hit like, share this with a history fan, and subscribe, because there are even more ancient secrets waiting to be uncovered.